Hey everybody, it's Friday. That means it is time for another edition of the Weekly Static. This guy right here, I am Ray Fluke, television beat writer for Bleeding Cool, and the Weekly Static, if you are new to this is essentially the time when I take a look back at the week in Bleeding Cool television coverage, look at a couple interesting topics, and give you, hopefully, an interesting, funny, unique, maybe even controversial take on whatever the topic is from this past week. So, if you have any comments, make sure you hit me up down below. My information will be there. You can comment there, or you can hit me up on social media too. So, the way we work this is we essentially take 5 articles, and you'll see those articles are listed below. They're not in any particular order, so when we say top 5, it's not like, you know, in that kind of order. We just rank them arbitrarily. But they are topics of interest that I think you guys should start thinking about and start talking about. They're pretty important, not just to the geek community, but to society overall. So we do it in a top 5 format because I love high fidelity. I'm a big John Cusack fan. He's like my spirit animal. So we're just essentially, this is kind of like not stealing such an ugly phrase. We're going to go with a kind of an homage to high fidelity. So top 5 issues from the past week from Bleeding Cool television coverage, starting with number 5. We have the Super Bowl and Justin Timberlake's halftime performance, which, to be blunt, sorry if I sound like I'm in a bit of a mood, but kind of sucked. And I don't normally beat up on Justin Timberlake. Actually, I have a lot of respect for him. I like the fact that he came out and finally addressed the whole thing about how he screwed over Janet Jackson with the whole kind of leaving her twisting in the wind and trying to disavow any involvement when you knew all along. So I'm glad he kind of owned up to that. Performance itself, though, I thought at best was lackluster. I don't know if it's the audio they were sometimes talking about. I know there were some claims of that. And the Prince thing, for all the hype, controversy, and everything, it really just looked like a big sheet and an old, like, elementary school from the late 70s, early 80s film projector thing put up on there. But as is usually the case, even dead, Prince still ends up saving the day. And let's be honest, Prince's halftime show from a whole bunch of years ago is still one of the best halftime performances we've seen in a long while. So, yeah, Justin Timberlake, big disappointment. I think he might be going the route of I make music every now and then, but I'm going to pretty much maybe do acting and be kind of like a variety host type person. I think that's kind of the road he's going. So that is number 5. Number 4. We also, going back to the Super Bowl, there's some controversy over the fact that Dodge used a very famous quote from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in their ad, and there were some people who had some issues, some outrage with the just, if nothing else, the sheer irony of the quote being used in a capitalistic commercial when it was screaming essentially anti-capitalism. Do I think it's weird? Do I think it's kind of ironic? Yeah, I do. I'll be the first one to say that. However, we live in an ironic age. You know, decades ago, the idea of a legitimate band or singer ever doing anything for ads or promotion was unheard of. Now, look what's going on. It used to be thought cheesy to ever play Vegas, and now you've got acts booking long stays on the Vegas Strip. Again, I don't know. In this regards, yeah, does it seem a little weird? But I don't know the whole backstory. You know, was King's estate okay with this? Did they approve it? Were they involved with it? Were any monies that received from it, are they going for any useful cause? So again, I don't know. I may not be comfortable with it, but if the good is far outweighing the bad, I don't necessarily have an issue with that. Plus, to be honest with you, you know how many people probably didn't know that quote before that commercial? And I know that's depressing and crappy to say, but in a lot of ways, it's kind of like music now. How often do we really even, well, I mean, regular radio, how rare. Even now, when you look at your iHeartRadios and your Pandoras, people are gravitating away from that. We still hear a lot of new music that we like through, you know, ESPN sport montages and TV and movie trailers and things like that. So at the end of the day, do I think it's a little odd and weird? Yeah. Do I think it is the end of civilization? No, I don't. I think it's just the way we communicate now, and unfortunately, we communicate commercially. We offset one for a greater good. So that is number 4. Number 3, comes word that Rob Gronkowski might be leaving the NFL to pursue an acting career based on the advice from Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Sylvester Stallone. Now, I'm just going to talk a little bit to Rob for a second here. Look at who's advising you in this regard. First, they're not going to advise you in any way where you would be any kind of legit competition to them, because, I mean, Sylvester Stallone is Sylvester Stallone. He may have made a lot of crappy movies, but the guy made Rocky, and by the way, he has an Oscar. People seem to forget that. And Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, I mean, with his backstory and the fact that you literally have studios teaming up now to pay for his contract to do movies, and just the way he has like 9,000 things going on, that's not something I think of, Rob, when I'm talking to you and I look at you. It seems like you have a problem playing a version of yourself, even the WWE. So in that regards, I mean, I think it's good in regards to like head injuries and things like that to always pursue anything outside of the NFL that you can get. But I think know your wheelhouse. If you were in the 80s, I would see you kind of in the Dolph Lundgren, Jean-Claude Van Damme type thing. Like, I think you're going to do a lot of direct to on-demand or direct to digital download type movies, where there's nothing wrong with that. You know, the international market needs lots and lots and lots of really good entertainment. So, but yeah, Rob, just keep that in mind. I'm not seeing you Oscar caliber. I'm not trying to pee on your Cheerios. Just not seeing you as an Oscar caliber in that regard. So that was 3. We're going to go to number 2. Number 2 is American Gods, and for those of you who don't know, there's been more drama going off set than there's been going on in the show, which, by the way, newsflash, doesn't look like we're going to be getting until probably mid-2019. We didn't even know, we may not be, at least I didn't, we wouldn't be getting it until January 2019, until the Hollywood Reporter had an article announcing Jesse Alexander as the new showrunner for the series. Jesse Alexander, who has a working relationship in the past with Brian Fuller on Star Trek Discovery, and I believe Heroes and Hannibal, I believe also. But what was interesting in the Hollywood Reporter is, as much as they were touting Jesse Alexander's connection to Brian Fuller, it also seemed to be kind of like a hatchet piece on Brian Fuller, essentially talking about how he was the reason the first season went over budget and why there weren't so many episodes, almost kind of saying he was a little too prima donna and skittish about the scripts and everything. And yeah, so it didn't make, and that and more importantly, that Neil Gaiman wasn't happy with how far they were steering away from his work. What I thought was interesting was that, again, Neil Gaiman took to Twitter, not to really get into anything long or lingering or anything, but to really address the idea of like, look, the only thing, you could take that article with a grain of salt, and when pressed, he really basically said, except for the Jesse Alexander announcement, none of the rest of it's true. So again, I just hope they get this show on track, because I just never understand when shows start off so well and just seem to really just go off the rails. You're coming off a really strong first season. I know Starz is probably losing it right now because they're thinking, oh, well, we've got a major tentpole series, and now it's like, oh, we've got a second season that may not even see the light of day for another, 14, 15 months. And especially when you have the Starz president talking about how he didn't want there to be a 1.5 to 2 years delay. But if even some of the rumors are true, I can't see how. I mean, at best, maybe January 2019, but I think May, June, realistically, I think is how we're looking at a second season, which really sucks. But again, it was very interesting the way Gaiman pushed back on that. That was number 2. I'm gonna go to our number 1, and it's funny because I'm gonna claim credit for this one, because the question that I asked in the headline was, and I want to make sure I get this right: did Star Wars just hit HBO's Confederate with a forced choke? You know, and I wrote the piece, and I wrote it very straightforward, but I just kind of want to say for the record, of course they did. Of course they did. Are you crazy? It just Benioff and Weiss. Let me tell you, they have a good run. They're coming off the last season of Game of Thrones, and this Confederate thing all of a sudden just kind of lands like a bomb. Not a great way of rolling it out, not really giving him a chance to get ahead of it, not even really testing the waters. I don't even know what was behind it, because I agree. The rollout of the idea of Confederate was probably one of the worst ideas possible, especially if you're not going to be doing anything with it anytime soon. So there was that screw up right there. I get it from HBO's standpoint. HBO's standpoint is thinking, hey, look, we just want to make sure to Game of Thrones fans, if you like these guys, we're still looking to keep them on. So I think there was an essential, like, deer in headlights, oh my god, we're freaking out, Game of Thrones is almost over, we have to make sure people know things are going to be cool, with the idea of maybe not everything they are connected with is necessarily going to be a great idea, or more specifically, maybe a good idea or an interesting concept that has to be rolled out very carefully and with a sense of understanding, not just boom, let's lay it out there, and then you suddenly act so surprised as to why it happened. Now, from the pair standpoint, this is their sweet Disney get out of jail free card, because they're getting, they're essentially getting a group of Star Wars movies. So this idea of them, starting Confederate after Game of Thrones, they took care of that in their statement. They already said, we're going to be jumping on this the moment Game of Thrones is over, which is a nice way of saying, hey, Confederate what? Huh? I don't know what you're talking about. Confederate, I think that's something about history, but I've never been good at history. I only know history from 1900 on. They're not going to be talking about the Civil War, Confederacy, Confederate. They're not going to be talking about conventions, if anything, to avoid any access to that. And, you know, the mouse is going to give them the best escape clause they can get. And also, HBO needs to thank the House of Mouse, too, because they get HBO out of it. Because, I mean, if they're going to be doing Star Wars, and who can blame them for taking Star Wars, HBO, of course, is not going to be able to, yeah, through air quotes, they're not going to be able to move forward on the project for artistic integrity. So, of course, the project will die. But HBO will not be the one who will have canceled it. Everybody kind of wins in the long run. You know, it's Disney gets their Game of Thrones guys. The Game of Thrones guys get a jail-free card from the Confederate debacle. And HBO still gets to maintain themselves as a house of artistic freedom. It's a win-win-win across the board. And again, just shows you how the amazing influence that Disney has. So that is our number one. Those are our 5 selections for this week's Weekly Static. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We will be back next week. Might have something a little more interesting coming up in the next week or two. Just going to give you a big teaser about that now. But I would thank you guys for being a part of this. Hope you enjoy it. Again, my name is Ray Fluck, television beat writer for Bleeding Cool. Please make sure to check out the articles. We have a lot of great writers at Bleeding Cool who cover television, film, comics, games, video games, everything you want to think of. Those 5 articles I went over are down below. But again, bleedingcool.com to check out everything we got going on 24/7. Thank you guys. Have a great weekend.